Welcome back to the critique. The material today looks at the massive success of the Housemaid film. It's linked to BookTok and what that means for thrillers aimed at women in theater.
And it's immediately clear the writer gets what's happening in Hollywood. You know, this idea that you don't always need that big four-quadrant movie.
Right.
But we need to jump right into the first big area for refinement here.
Let's talk about causality.
Precisely. The assertion that behind-the-scenes controversy is a necessary prerequisite for dragging, the key female audience out of their algorithms and into a theater, that needs a little deeper qualification. I mean, the analysis is smart. It does a great job highlighting how all that external tabloid drama—
Oh, like with Anyone But You or the casting for It Ends With Us.
Exact. How that stuff may have really helped their success. That part is solid.
The argument being that the BookTok audience is like conditioned to need some kind of algorithmic hook, and drama is just free marketing.
That's the theory. Yeah, but here's the weakness. The analysis leans way too heavily on the lack of controversy being the only reason for the failure of that other Colleen Hoover adaptation, Regretting You.
Okay.
And that creates a potentially narrow causal link that might be overlooking other huge factors.
Wait a second. Are we maybe overcomplicating a simple viral story here? I mean, isn't the whole point of BookTok that it provides its own organic controversy?
How so?
The drama happens online, producers save money. Why bring in distribution logistics that feel, secondary to the whole social media thing?
That's a fair challenge. But if the goal of this piece is to analyze market viability, which is an economic argument, we can't just ignore the mechanics of how studios actually, monetize that hype.
Got it.
So my suggestion is to broaden the analytical scope. Look at the other metrics that actually drive box office for this specific genre. It'll make the whole argument just much more robust.
So we need to back it up with hard evidence beyond just like social media chatter. What kind of examples are we talking about?
Okay, start with distribution strategy. Look at Regretting You specific. Was it given the same massive theatrical footprint? I'm talking screen count, premium formats like IMAX, and this is the big one, the marketing spend.
Right.
I mean, The Housemaid making what it did on a $35 million budget, that suggests a really strategic placement, not just getting lucky with gossip.
That makes a lot of sense. For an audience that usually watches stuff on their phones, giving it a wide release in premium theaters is a huge statement.
It is. It signals that this is a theatrical experience.
Yeah.
So if Regretting You had a soft release or was only marketed online, then its box office isn't a failure of controversy, it's a failure of distribution. Also, just look at the timing. Was its October 2025 release window just too competitive? October is packed with horror movies going for that same demographic.
And it's the start of award season buzz, too.
Right. So timing is often way more destructive than a lack of gossip. And finally, IP strength.
Not all books by the same author are equal, for sure.
For sure. Was Regretting You really one of Hoover's big, recognizable BookTok titles? I mean, compare that to the hype around It Ends With Us. Adding these measurable facts, screen count, release window, it strengthens the claim that this is a real theatrical break, regardless of celebrity drama.
So the controversy helps, but the distribution makes it bankable.
It strengthens the forest by defining the trees more accurately,
Okay, that definitely tightens up the core economic argument. Let's pivot now from logistics to messaging. I think we have to look at the tone the analysis takes.
A crucial pivot.
Right. So while the material gives this really astute analysis of the market shift, that non-four-quadrant female-targeted films can work in theaters, the power of that insight gets a little bit diluted by the tone.
How so?
The analysis makes this great distinction between successful movies and, as it calls them, extremely annoying, extremely drawn out, and extremely melodramatic TV shows.
And that distinction is like the intellectual money shot.
It is.
It's defining the economic breakthrough. These BookTok properties can just skip the endless 8-episode streaming season and go straight to the big screen for a focused, hungry audience.
Yes. That objective commercial analysis is the piece's biggest strength. But the weakness pops up when it starts describing the book itself. It uses really judgmental language, calling the series a violent, radical feminist fantasy novel series that women eat right up because they hate men. That kind of strong political framing, it risks totally overshadowing the business analysis you were just talking about.
That's fascinating. If the whole point is to understand the commercial success of the thing, then slapping a polarizing political label on it just injects this distracting variable.
Yeah.
The reader might just dismiss the whole analysis based on whether they agree with that label instead of focusing on the actual metrics of success you're trying to point out.
It becomes the commentary on the message instead of a critique of the market.
Exactly. And that just muddies the waters of your own authority. So the suggestion for improvement is to just maintain a consistent, objective editorial distance. The goal is to analyze why the product sells, not to, pass judgment on its politics.
That's tough, though. I mean, can you really discuss something this charged without acknowledging the politics of its fan base and its themes?
Well, you replace the political label with the functional narrative engine.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Let's make it concrete. When discussing the protagonist Millie, instead of calling it a radical feminist fantasy, analyze the plot through the lens of the cycle of empowerment and retribution, or the emotional draw of the liberation of a battered housewife. The material itself even notes those as key drivers.
Framing it around the cycle of empowerment, that's purely commercial language. It describes the mechanism for audience catharsis, which translates directly to ticket sales.
That's the key. Frame it around the success of using her internal conflict as a bankable niche genre. The piece makes a fantastic point calling this genre the new Marvel for women.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Is pure gold. So just stick to analyzing why that concept, the retribution fantasy, is so financially potent. Instead of using polarizing labels, we want to analyze the product's function, not as perceived philosophy.
That's a powerful shift. It gives the whole piece a much higher degree of commercial authority.
It keeps the eye on the prize.
The market breakthrough.
Exactly.
Okay, let's look closer at the part about the protagonist, Millie, because this ties right into narrative authority. The initial analysis sets up this really strong logical reason for her career path. Her past limits her options, forcing her into these dangerous households. But then it's unnecessarily undercut.
Yeah, the setup is fundamentally excellent. The argument that she's got a past so she can't seek out reputable people, which means you're more likely to end up with some abusive piece of shit who's not going to ask too many questions.
It's just sound logic.
It's perfect narrative logic. It completely explains why she keeps finding herself in these high-stakes situations. It's about reputation and necessity.
But here's where the weakness comes in. The analysis sort of dismisses that great rationale by suggesting this alternative, funnier scenario where she has a perfect record but still ends up with abusers.
Right.
It's a fleeting thought, but it diminishes the really well-articulated logic that was already there. It feels like an unnecessary digression.
It really does pull the rug out from under your own intellectual architecture. I mean, when you lay out a strong, logical framework for a character's motive, why would you then stray into a hypothetical that actually simplifies the dilemma?
Yeah, it almost feels like the analysis is looking for a plot hole where the plot actually provided a really strong internal justification.
Exactly. The writer should just trust the narrative consistency they've already identified. So the suggestion here is simple. Focus entirely on that established logical framework. Her past dictates her employment. Use that to better analyze her evolution into the sequel.
So use the consequences of the first novel to drive the critique forward, instead of questioning the premise.
Absolutely. And let's make it concrete. Focus on what she gets at the end. She gets a check for $100,000 and a strong referral for her next job.
That's the critical development right there. That cash and that referral completely change her circumstances.
They do. It shifts her from desperation to mission. So the critique should ask, does that money and that referral erase her bad reputation? If she can now afford to be selective, does that mean the next house she chooses is even more dangerous?
Ah, okay.
Is she now actively inserting herself into places she should logically be able to avoid?
That shifts the whole narrative weight. She's no longer just stumbling into danger out of necessity. She's choosing an escalating level of risk because she's now an active agent in this system of retribution.
That is the more advanced critique, and that allows for a deeper analysis of narrative consistency rather than speculating about funny plot holes. It keeps the focus on her evolution as a, quote, hit woman for abused wives.
Okay. That brings us to the end of this critique. Look, this material is already operating at a really high level, but we found 3 key areas to just maximize its impact.
First, broaden that causality analysis beyond just controversy. If you only blame the lack of gossip for market failure, The argument is missing the logistical muscle of, distribution strategy and IP strength.
Right. Look into screen count, marketing budgets, all that stuff to really prove the market viability.
Second, refine the argumentative angle. Maintain that objective editorial distance when you're talking about the content itself. Focus on the economic breakthrough, on why the narrative structure works as a bankable genre.
Instead of relying on polarizing political labels that might just detract from the commercial insights.
Exact. And third, maintain your focus on the strong narrative logic of the protagonist's past. Get rid of the speculation and use the concrete developments from the first story's ending, the money, the referral, to drive a deeper critique of the escalating stakes in the sequel.
These are high-level, actionable suggestions, all aimed at maximizing the robustness and commercial authority of your analysis. We really encourage you to integrate these points and submit the refined material back for a follow-up discussion.
We look forward to seeing the results.